They say that life can change in an instant. We all know it, yet somehow it just doesn't always seem to sink in, until the universe sends us just one more reminder. I'd imagine 2023 to be a little bit different, to be less chaotic and less hectic than the years before it, but you can probably imagine that isn't exactly what happened. The house project faded directly into the start of lawn season, and this lawn season was one of the most challenging ones that I've ever experienced. Ongoing drought and taking on about 100,000 square foot of turf to manage, all while running our online business and still living in a partially unfinished home, was more taxing mentally than I think we had imagined it would be. Looking back, that crossfade of home building straight into our work grind started to take its toll. On the verge of spontaneous combustion, Kelsey and I decided we better take a weekend away and head to our favorite place on earth as the fall colors began to set in. Though we've been to the North Shore of Minnesota many times, this was somehow our first time checking out the Lutsen Mountains.
When I left you, got a tattoo, dyed my hair, lost my mind. My big brother.
Looking out on these trees, we missed the fire red glow of this forest by just a week. But the whole area was beautiful, and I'm sure it's somewhere we'll visit again.
Cried about Jesus, cried about James, cried about Nashville and all of the people.
While heading back to Duluth, there's so many great little spots just off the main path. And we made one more stop at Palisade Head. If you're afraid of heights, I would not recommend it, but the views over Lake Superior are spectacular from this 200-foot cliff.
Give me back my soul, 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 let go, let go. When I met you.
Back in the Duluth Harbor, the shipping season was still underway as colder weather began to creep in. As we began our trip back to Iowa, we stopped at a spot that's become a new favorite, and that's Jay Cook State Park. Back in Iowa, the garden was beginning to show its final signs of life for the year, and the harvest was well underway.
I brought the dogs for a walk down here this morning and looked over and noticed that there was some frost on the pumpkin leaves. Would assume I'm like most gardeners where you're trying to hold on to every last drop of produce you can get out of the garden. But today's the day. It all has to be done now. I need to save this to make sure that these pumpkins don't get lost. Actually, I'm pretty impressed with what we've gotten. Probably 16 or 17 of them out there. So we're gonna pull those. We gotta pull the squash, the yellow and the zucchini, and then I think the green beans are done as well. I'll take you through what we got this year from going July 15th where most things got planted and me saying, I hope I get to harvest one tomato. I'm so grateful for what I've pulled from this garden. It's been an unbelievable year for our first year, so it's time to say goodbye. we're going to leave these in the garden for a while. Ernie has really been enjoying the fact that we're pulling okra for him. I've got 2-gallon bags frozen in the freezer, and we'll let these go until the cold weather just won't let them go anymore. But they are looking really great. I'm pretty happy with how these turned out. The Roma tomatoes on this side of the garden definitely had some disease issues. We had some blossom end rot, and so there's some soil testing that I'm going to do going into next year. Cherry tomatoes did great, and I'm actually going to leave these. We'll wait for the next frost to come through, and before then I'll pick everything green, ripe, doesn't matter. We can ripen those inside in some paper bags, so we'll be able to salvage that crop pretty well. Green beans are going to be done today. That's it. We've canned close to 30 pints so far this year. I had 1 bed left in the garden. I was going to do beets here, but I got planting too late, so I had all of these zinnia seeds and I just threw them down. And to be honest, this is one of my favorite things in the garden this year. It has been so beautiful. The bees, we have hummingbirds that come to visit. The colors are just amazing. Really some cool color combinations, actually some variegated ones in here. I'll be letting these kind of just settle in for winter, drying out, and we'll harvest some seeds. And I will likely be doing this again next year. It's been such a joy to come down to the garden and see all of the rainbow of colors that these have produced. Historically, I have lost every single zucchini and yellow squash crop I've ever done to either the vine borer or to squash bugs, because I don't use pesticides in our garden, so it's hand picking or nothing. Usually I get 1 harvest and they're done. I pull them because they've been infested. So I planted all of these thinking I was going to get 1 nice big harvest out of everything and then end up having to pull it. And fingers crossed, I never saw a single squash bug this year. They lasted the whole season. We got so tired of pulling squash that I'm pretty sure Ryan never wants to see another one in his life. But I found some great recipes. We have a freezer full of shredded zucchini. We did zucchini flour this year, so we're going to try some recipes with that. I'm super happy with how everything turned out. I wish I had kept track of how many pounds, but I bet it's well over 100 pounds of zucchini that we pulled this year easily. So I planted a crop of pie pumpkins. These are not jack-o'-lanterns, although you could set them out on your porch if you wanted to do that. But my intention was to be able to preserve these for some ground pumpkin. And not all of them are completely ripe. We'll be able to finish ripening these inside. However, since that frost did come through last night, I have to take these in because they aren't going to survive out here any longer. And even some of the crop may have gotten damaged. I can see some frost spots on some of these. So these are going to turn into pumpkin pie, pumpkin bread, any of that for the winter.
The transition seemed slow this year, but little by little, signs of fall foliage began to appear. It's always this time of year where I remember my love of the 4 seasons. How the world wipes the slate clean to begin again the next spring. And no matter how many times you witness it, somehow it still feels a little bit like magic. Little did we know that these moments of evening serenity would quickly turn into something much more serious. So if you've been watching for a while, you probably know that we rescue Westies. This breed was really never something that we intended on. It was just our first rescue that we did, and we just fell in love with the breed and have learned so much about them since then. So Ernie is our latest one that we adopted a few years ago. His story is pretty sad because he was chained up in a backyard in Arkansas for about 6 years. And knowing him now and knowing his personality, he's extremely smart. He just absolutely loves being with his people. So to think about him sitting there by himself for that amount of time, it's just very, very difficult to think about. What happened with him was Westies are very prone to skin issues if they're not on the right diet. If they're in an environment like that where it was probably hot and humid outside, he didn't stay clean. And so what happened was his skin got really bad to the point of actually bleeding and just terrible. And I won't show you a picture because it's just awful to look at. Finally, I'm not sure exactly how he got put up for adoption, but we have worked with this organization in Missouri called Westie Rescue of Missouri for many years now to get most of these Westies that we have. And they are a great organization. They really take care of this breed. They reached out to us about Ernie, and we decided to adopt him. And from the moment that we've had him, he's been very bonded to me. Most of them have been more bonded to Kelsey just because she is able to do more of their care while I'm doing a lot of my work and other things. But with Ernie, there was just something about him being more bonded to me, and it's been a very special relationship. So long story short, not long after we adopted him, we realized that he had Westie lung disease. We've had 2 other Westies that have had this. It is basically pulmonary fibrosis. So the lungs get a bunch of scar tissue in there. They start to build that scar tissue until there's just not room in there to expand and contract and do what they need to do to take their breath. And so the diagnosis for that is usually 12 to 18 months after they get diagnosed. That's about the lifespan for them. So we didn't know how long Ernie had already had this when we got him, but Kels did a whole bunch of research and figured out some extra treatments for him to do. He's been doing laser treatments, which helps to break up that scar tissue. He's been doing some acupuncture. He's been doing just everything possible that he can to try to extend out his life. So everything was going really, really well with that. And it had actually been almost 2 years since he had been diagnosed, and he was still doing very well. Didn't really look like it was progressing too much until one day, just a few months ago, he woke up and he just wasn't breathing very well. And over about the course of the next half an hour, it got worse until he was kind of gasping for air. And so we took him into the emergency room. They put him in an oxygen chamber. And every time they would try to take him out of that oxygen chamber, he just couldn't breathe on his own. He couldn't get enough air. And so they took some x-rays at that time, and it just did not look good. The lungs were really cloudy. There wasn't a whole lot of space left in there for breathing. And so we had to make a decision at that point. Do we put him in this oxygen chamber for up to 24 hours and see if that will fix his issue? Or do we, have to say that this is the end for him all of a sudden, which it was very sudden because he had been doing great whole time up to until then, days before that, running around in the garden and doing everything that he normally does. We decided to put him in the oxygen chamber for 24 hours. Overnight, the radiologist read the x-rays and said, I'm pretty sure he actually has pneumonia. Started the treatment for that, and meanwhile, we got to go visit him while he was in the chamber, and of course, he definitely looked very sad and didn't want to be in there, but it was for his own good. And the next day, we got the call in the morning that the treatment looked like it was working, the antibiotics were working, and he was starting to breathe better. He'd come out of the oxygen chamber, and his respiratory rate had come down when he was breathing on his own again. So we got to go and pick him up. And Ernie was being Ernie, and we got him home. He got to meet with the other dogs again, of course. And everything was going really well, I would say, for about 4 weeks, until we started to notice just a little bit more labored breathing again, and some things that just didn't seem quite right. So we did some more digging into that. And I think that really the disease is just progressing at this point. We've adjusted a few different things. He is really still a fighter, and we're just spending as much time as we possibly can with him. And it makes you realize in life that there's these things that happen. Your life is so hectic and so many things going on, and all of a sudden something makes you stop and realize that it's time to pay attention to the things that matter to you. And this was really a moment for us here that happened. And so we've been trying to pay attention to him as much as we can and just trying to take care of him. We don't know exactly how long he has at this point. It's really just day to day. Some days are better than others, but we've been continuing with his treatments, continuing to do everything that we can. Although his breathing is not quite what it was, he's still very peppy and wants definitely to be fed many, many times every day. So we're doing our best to pamper him and to just spend as much time with all the dogs as we can during this time in their lives when they're all getting older. And it's a good reminder to be there and be present for those important things in your life. Despite our roller coaster of emotions, life continues to move forward. The fall colors were in full swing and warm days continued into November.
Maybe heaven made the darkness so we could better find paradise. Don't you dare give up when it's hardest. That could be the moment you get it right. That could be the moment you get it right. Heaven, come help me. I'm feeling like a little kid, like I can't find a way out, and I'll always feel like this.
The sunsets of winter began to show as we hosted our first Thanksgiving in our new home. In the same way that life can change in an instant, the brown of fall quickly changed to the white of winter, at least for a few days anyway. The wonderful white scenery changed once again as we continued to let Ernie experience the fresh air that he loves. There will never be enough time, but no matter how long we get to keep them, we know we gave them our all.
Close my eyes and think of you. Go to sleep and dream of you. We don't get to be here long. I gave you the best of me, loved you more than anything, but we don't get to be here long.
And someday, whenever that day comes to say our final goodbyes, I think Ernie will be running around just like this in dog heaven.
We don't get to be